The desert sun was just beginning to rise, casting a golden glow over the vast, endless sands. The air was dry and heavy, and the heat promised a long, challenging day ahead. A group of Delta Force operators moved quietly across the terrain, their footsteps barely making a sound over the shifting sands. These men were trained for the most dangerous missions, but today was different. It wasn't about bullets or explosives, it was about observation, protection, and respect for a culture that was foreign to them, but steeped in centuries of tradition. Among the team was Sergeant Jason Turner, a veteran with sharp instincts and a quick sense of humor. He had been in countless operations before, seen things most people couldn't imagine, yet something about this mission felt different. They were stationed near an ancient tomb, a place of immense historical importance, and their task was simple but crucial: to ensure the safety of the site and its guards while operating discreetly. While most of the world saw these tombs as relics of the past, the locals revered them as sacred ground, and it was the guards' duty to maintain that sanctity. As the team walked along a narrow path leading to the tomb, Turner's eyes caught something unusual. One of the guards, a tall man with a serious expression and a posture as rigid as stone, had a tattoo on his arm. It was intricate and detailed, unlike anything Turner had seen before. The patterns twisted and turned like they had a story to tell, a story that had been etched into the man's skin with great care and meaning. Turner nudged his teammate, Private Ellis, and whispered, "Hey, look at that. He's got a tattoo that looks like a treasure map or something." Ellis chuckled softly, shaking his head. The team had a light-hearted culture, often using humor to ease tension, but Turner didn't realize that his joke carried more weight than he thought. As they got closer, the guard noticed them and gave a slight nod of acknowledgement, a silent greeting. His eyes were sharp and steady, and Turner felt a flicker of unease. There was something about the man that commanded attention, a quiet authority that didn't need words to communicate. But Turner, caught in the moment, leaned toward Ellis and whispered again, louder this time, "I wonder if he'd let us borrow that tattoo if we asked nicely." Ellis snorted, trying not to laugh out loud. A few other members of the team glanced at Turner, some rolling their eyes while others stifled smiles. Turner, feeling proud of his own joke, didn't notice the subtle shift in the atmosphere. The guard's expression didn't change, but there was a firmness in his gaze that hinted at something deeper, something that Turner, in his casual amusement, had completely overlooked. The team continued walking, keeping a careful distance from the guard. Turner, however, couldn't resist making one more comment, this time louder and more noticeable. "Man, that tattoo must hurt to get. Can you imagine sitting still for hours just to get your arm scribbled on like that?" He laughed softly, expecting his teammates to join in. Some did, others remained silent, sensing that perhaps they had crossed an invisible line. What Turner didn't know was that tattoos in this culture were not just body art. They were symbols of heritage, stories of courage, commitment, and identity. Each line and curve told a tale of ancestors, battles fought, and lessons passed down through generations. For the tomb guards, the tattoos weren't mere decoration. They were a badge of honor, a mark of their devotion to protect the sacred site and uphold the traditions of their people. As the day went on, the Delta team continued their mission, checking the surroundings, coordinating with local officials, and maintaining a discreet presence. Turner, however, kept glancing back at the guard, curiosity mixing with his lingering amusement. There was something about the man that intrigued him. Despite his initial mockery, Turner couldn't deny a growing respect for the guard's dedication and the silent dignity he carried. During a short break, the team gathered under a small shade structure, sipping water and catching their breath. Turner leaned back, still looking toward the tomb guard, and finally asked one of the translators quietly, "Hey, what's the story behind that tattoo?" The translator paused for a moment, then spoke in a soft, respectful tone. "It is a symbol of loyalty and protection," he explained. "It tells of the guard's family, his duty, and the sacred oath he has taken. It is not just art, it is his honor." Turner nodded slowly, absorbing the information. There was a weight to those words, a depth he hadn't considered. Suddenly, his earlier comments felt thoughtless, almost careless. He looked back at the guard, who was now patrolling with calm precision, each movement deliberate and careful. The realization hit Turner that humor, while a coping mechanism in his line of work, could sometimes come across as disrespect. especially in a place where tradition and honor were held above all else. Despite the lesson, Turner's personality didn't change overnight. He still had his jokes, his casual quips, but now they were tempered with an awareness he hadn't possessed before. The desert sun climbed higher, casting sharp shadows across the sand, and the Delta team continued their careful watch. Every so often, Turner's eyes met those of the tomb guard, and this time there was a silent acknowledgement, not of mockery, but of understanding. The guard's stare was no longer intimidating. It was respectful, a quiet test of character that Turner realized he had passed simply by observing and appreciating rather than mocking. As the hours stretched on, the team maintained their vigilance. The tomb, with its ancient stones and intricate carvings, seemed almost alive under the scorching sun. Birds occasionally flew overhead, and the wind whispered through the desert, carrying with it the scent of sand and history. Turner, sitting quietly during a rare moment of rest, reflected on the morning's events. He had laughed at something he didn't understand, but he had also begun to see a world larger than his own, a world where honor, loyalty, and tradition were woven into every gesture, every mark, every choice. By midday, the team was ready to move back toward their temporary base. Turner lingered a moment longer, watching the guard stand tall, unwavering in his responsibility. There was no need for words. The tattoo, the posture, the careful movements, everything spoke volumes. Turner realized that the guard's true power wasn't in force or threat, but in the quiet certainty of purpose and the deep respect he commanded without demanding it. As they walked back, Turner felt a mixture of humility and curiosity. He had come to the desert as a trained soldier, ready for anything that might happen in the field, but he had learned something unexpected, that understanding and respect could be just as important as strategy or strength. The tattoo, once a source of humor, had become a symbol of insight, a reminder that every culture had its codes and every person their story, waiting to be understood rather than judged. Even as the team returned to base, Turner kept thinking about the guard. He wondered about the hours it had taken to create that tattoo, the stories behind every line, and the courage required to dedicate one's life to something bigger than oneself. The sun was now high, casting harsh light over the desert, but Turner felt a warmth in his chest, a quiet acknowledgement of a lesson learned. Respect often begins with curiosity and ends with understanding. By the time the day came to a close, Turner's initial amusement had faded completely. He had seen firsthand that appearances could be deceiving and that mockery, even when meant in jest, could overlook profound meaning. The tomb guard, for his part, continued his silent watch, a living emblem of dedication and pride. Turner had laughed at the tattoo that morning, but by afternoon he understood its true significance. It was more than ink. It was a statement of identity, a story written on skin, and a testament to the human spirit. As night fell over the desert, the Delta Force operators gathered their gear and prepared to leave the tomb behind. Turner took one last glance at the guard, now standing in the shadows, silhouette against the fading light. He offered a silent nod of respect, one that needed no words. In that moment, Turner knew that some lessons weren't taught in classrooms or briefings. They were taught in quiet observation, in the recognition of someone else's dedication, and in the humility to see beyond one's own perspective. The desert was vast. The mission ongoing and the day's experiences had left an indelible mark on Turner's mind. Humor, bravery, duty, and respect. These were all intertwined in ways he hadn't fully grasped before. And as he walked away from the tomb, he carried with him the first of many lessons he would remember for the rest of his life. That true honor often lies in understanding, not in laughter. The sun was rising again, casting a softer light over the desert than the harsh glare of the day before. Sergeant Jason Turner woke early, as he always did, feeling the dry, warm air of the desert brushing against his face. The previous day's events were still fresh in his mind. The sight of the tomb guard's intricate tattoo, the unspoken respect it commanded, and the lessons he had quietly learned. Turner was a soldier, trained to act fast and react even faster, but he had realized that some of the most important lessons weren't about tactics or combat. They were about people, about understanding the world beyond his own experiences. The Delta Force team had returned to the tomb that morning, this time with a different mindset. Yesterday's minor misstep had not gone unnoticed. especially by their commanding general, who had been observing the interaction from a distance. The general had a reputation for being strict but fair, always pushing the team to not only succeed in missions, but to grow as individuals. Turner knew that the general's eyes were always watching, analyzing, and teaching, even when he didn't speak. As the team approached the tomb, the guard was already in position, standing straight and unwavering, the early sunlight highlighting the tattoo on his arm. Turner felt a mixture of nervousness and curiosity. He wanted to show that he had learned from the previous day, that his respect for the guard and his culture was genuine. But at the same time, he wasn't sure how to approach someone who carried such a deep and unspoken authority. During the morning briefing, the general spoke directly to the team. His voice was calm but carried the weight of experience. Yesterday, some comments were made about the tomb guard's tattoo, he said, looking directly at Turner. It may have seemed harmless, but what you laughed at represents centuries of tradition, commitment, and personal sacrifice. Today you will observe, learn, and respect. That is your mission. Turner nodded, feeling a mix of shame and determination. He realized that this was not just about avoiding jokes or being polite. It was about understanding the history and honor that the guard represented. As the team spread out to monitor the perimeter, Turner decided to pay closer attention, watching the guard with careful eyes. He noticed how every step was measured, how every gesture from adjusting his robe to the way he held his spear was precise and purposeful. The guard moved as if he were part of the tomb itself, blending with the stones, the sand, and the shadows. Throughout the morning, Turner observed quietly, asking questions to the translator whenever he could. He learned that the tattoo on the guard's arm told a story of generations who had protected the tomb. Each symbol represented a lesson or an achievement in the guard's family history. Some lines symbolized courage, others wisdom, loyalty, and patience. Turner listened carefully, realizing that what he had joked about yesterday was actually a living record of honor and duty. Turner also noticed the guard's interactions with the local villagers who came to pay their respects. The guard never spoke loudly or showed arrogance. Instead, he guided people gently, maintaining order while showing kindness and understanding. Turner saw children approach him hesitantly, and the guard knelt to speak with them, answering questions patiently and even allowing them to touch certain safe parts of the tomb. This quiet strength impressed Turner far more than any demonstration of force ever could. As midday approached, the sun climbed higher, beating down relentlessly. The Delta team sought shade and water, taking turns to rest while keeping watch. Turner, despite being exhausted from the heat, refused to leave his post. He wanted to observe more, to learn more, and to understand what it truly meant to be a guardian of something sacred. He realized that respect was not a one-time gesture. It was a continuous effort, a way of thinking and acting every single day. During a brief pause, Turner asked the translator, "How long has he been guarding this tomb?" The translator replied, "He has served for over 15 years. His family has been guardians for generations before him. It is not a job. It is a way of life." Turner felt a shiver run down his spine. 15 years of dedication, patience, and vigilance, it was something he could barely imagine. He realized that his own career, filled with missions, combat, and strategy, had given him skill, but the guard had a depth of character that came from devotion and respect, not training. Turner began to think about his own behavior from the day before. His jokes, though innocent in intent, had shown a lack of understanding. He reflected on the lessons of humility he had learned in the field, realizing that true respect required listening, observing, and appreciating the effort and history behind every action. The guard's tattoo was not just a mark on his arm. It was a symbol of integrity, honor, and the silent courage to stand for something greater than oneself. Turner felt a growing sense of admiration that he couldn't put into words. As the afternoon wore on, a small challenge arose. A group of tourists had come to the site, unaware of the rules or the sacredness of the tomb. They began to approach areas that were restricted, laughing and taking photos without realizing the importance of their surroundings. Turner saw the guard step forward calmly, speaking firmly but politely, guiding the visitors away from sensitive areas. There was no anger, no shouting, just steady authority. Turner watched closely, noticing how the guard maintained order without intimidating or embarrassing anyone. It was a lesson in leadership, one that Turner knew he would carry with him long after leaving the desert. Later, during a quiet moment, Turner finally approached the guard himself. He walked slowly, making sure not to appear threatening. "Sir," he said softly, "I want to apologize for my comments yesterday. I didn't understand. I do now." The guard looked at him silently, his eyes steady but unreadable. Turner felt a slight tension in the air, unsure if his words were enough. The guard's gaze softened just slightly. A subtle acknowledgement of Turner's sincerity. Turner realized that respect wasn't about words. It was about action and understanding. By evening, the Delta team gathered for a debriefing. The general, who had been observing throughout the day, spoke once again. "Today you saw firsthand what dedication, honor, and respect look like," he said. "It is not always visible in actions alone. Sometimes it is in silence, in patience, and in the commitment to something bigger than yourself. Sergeant Turner, your attention to learning is commendable. Remember, humility is as important as courage." Turner felt a surge of pride, not for himself, but for the lesson he had internalized. He had come to the desert as a trained soldier, ready for any danger. But he had returned with a deeper understanding of humanity, culture, and respect. The tomb guard standing in the background remained a quiet figure, yet his presence spoke volumes. Turner knew that he would never see tattoos, traditions, or guardians the same way again. As night fell over the desert, Turner sat quietly near the tomb, the stars beginning to shine against the dark sky. He thought about the day's events, the tourists, the observation, the translator's words, and the quiet, unwavering dedication of the tomb guard. He realized that learning and respect were not one-time acts. They were ongoing, continuous practices, and for the first time in a long while, Turner felt a sense of peace in the understanding that some lessons could not be taught in classrooms or training drills. They had to be experienced firsthand. The desert wind whispered softly, and Turner looked at the guard, now resting under a small canopy. There was a sense of calm authority in the way he moved and breathed. Turner understood that courage was not always loud, that strength was not always measured by power, and that respect was not demanded. It was earned and given freely. The tattoo, once a source of amusement, had become a symbol of wisdom, patience, and integrity. By the end of the evening, Turner had learned not just about the guard, but about himself. He had learned that humor without understanding could be careless, that observation could teach more than instruction, and that respect required attention, patience, and empathy. He knew that these lessons would stay with him long after the mission was over, guiding him in future operations and in life itself. As the team prepared to leave the tomb for the night, Turner took a final look at the guard, who nodded subtly in acknowledgement. There were no words needed, only understanding. Turner realized that sometimes the greatest lessons come not from orders, briefings, or even battle, but from quiet moments of insight, from watching and learning from those who have dedicated their lives to something greater than themselves. The day had started with curiosity, continued with reflection, and ended with a sense of respect that Turner knew he would never forget. The tomb guard had taught him something far more valuable than any mission briefing, that honor, duty, and loyalty were timeless virtues, written not only on stone and history, but on the hearts and actions of those who lived by them. And as Turner finally settled down to rest, he felt a quiet pride, not in himself, but in the understanding that he had gained, the knowledge that respect could be more powerful than any weapon, and the realization that every person, every culture, every symbol has a story worth learning before making a judgment. The next morning, the desert was quiet, almost as if it were holding its breath. Sergeant Jason Turner woke early, the cool pre-dawn air offering a brief relief before the sun would rise and heat the sands once again. Today felt different from the days before. The lessons of observation, respect, and understanding were still fresh in his mind, and he felt a sense of anticipation. He had learned a great deal from the tomb guard over the past 2 days, but he also sensed that there was something more, a deeper experience awaiting him that would solidify all he had come to understand. The Delta Force team gathered quietly near their vehicles, checking equipment and planning the day's patrol. The general had scheduled a meeting with the team near the tomb, and Turner knew this was no ordinary briefing. The previous day's events had been observed carefully, And the general often used such moments to teach lessons far beyond strategy or combat skills. As they approached the tomb, Turner felt his heartbeat quicken, not from fear but from respect. The guard stood in his usual position, calm and unyielding, the intricate tattoo on his arm catching the first rays of sunlight. Turner could see the guard's eyes scan the horizon, alert and aware of every movement around him. As the team assembled, the general arrived, his presence commanding attention without a single word. He walked slowly among the operators, his eyes lingering on Turner for just a moment longer than the others. Turner straightened instinctively, recalling the lecture from yesterday. The general stopped a few feet away, his gaze sweeping across the tomb, the guard and the team. "Today," he began, "you will not only observe but participate in showing the respect and understanding that was expected of you yesterday. Sergeant Turner, you have already taken steps in the right direction. Now it is time to demonstrate that what you have learned is real." Turner felt a mix of nervousness and determination. He had spent the past day watching the guard, learning silently and reflecting on his own behavior. He understood that respect was not just about words. It was about action. He looked at the guard, who acknowledged him with a subtle nod. That small gesture, barely noticeable to anyone else, carried immense weight. It was an invitation to prove that Turner's understanding was genuine. The general gave a brief instruction to the team. They would accompany the tomb guard through his morning patrol, observing closely but also assisting in small ways where appropriate. Turner's heart raced with anticipation. He followed the guard, careful to mirror his movements, to speak only when necessary, and to show attentiveness in every gesture. The guard moved gracefully, yet with a quiet authority that made Turner feel both humbled and inspired. As they walked along the narrow stone paths surrounding the tomb, Turner noticed the way villagers approached the guard. Some came seeking guidance, others bringing small offerings. The guard greeted each person with patience and care, his attention focused entirely on them despite the Delta team's presence. Turner realized that his respect was being tested not by orders or drills, but by how he behaved in this environment, how he absorbed and reflected the values he had observed. Midway through the patrol, Turner noticed a young boy trying to climb onto a section of the tomb that was off limits. The guard quickly but gently guided the boy back, kneeling to explain the importance of respect for the sacred site. Turner felt a sudden urge to intervene, but he remembered the lessons of observation and restraint. Instead, he watched closely, noting the guard's tone, body language, and patience. He realized that real strength was often silent, that leadership could be measured not in force but in understanding and guidance. As the patrol continued, Turner finally saw an opportunity to show respect in action. A section of the path had become slippery from recent sandstorms, and the guard paused, carefully testing each step. Turner stepped forward and quietly offered assistance, keeping his movements deliberate and unobtrusive. The guard accepted the help with a nod, and Turner felt a surge of pride, not for himself, but for the acknowledgement that understanding and respect could be expressed through small, meaningful actions. By late morning, the patrol returned to the main courtyard of the tomb. The Delta team gathered again, and the general addressed them. "You have seen the dedication, the patience, and the knowledge that this guard represents. Sergeant Turner, you have taken the first step toward understanding something that cannot be taught in a classroom. But respect is more than observation. It is living it, demonstrating it, and sharing it with others. Today you have done that." Turner felt a warmth in his chest. He looked at the guard, who now stood quietly in the sunlight, the tattoo visible and striking. It was no longer a symbol of curiosity or amusement. It had become a symbol of lessons learned, of humility earned, and of genuine respect. Turner stepped forward slowly, removing his hat in a gesture of acknowledgement. He could feel the weight of the moment, the history, the dedication, and the silent authority that the guard embodied. The guard's eyes met Turner's, and for the first time, Turner saw something more than a silent acknowledgement. There was a sense of connection, a recognition that Turner had truly understood the value of honor, duty, and tradition. Turner bowed his head slightly, a small gesture of respect that conveyed far more than words could. The guard's lips curved into the faintest of smiles, subtle but unmistakable, and he returned the gesture of acknowledgement in his own way. The general, observing from nearby, stepped forward and saluted Turner. It was a powerful moment, not for Turner's military skill or tactical knowledge, but for the personal growth he had demonstrated. The salute was a recognition of understanding, humility, and respect, a rare and meaningful acknowledgement that Turner knew he would carry for the rest of his life. His teammates watched in quiet admiration, understanding that this was not just a mission milestone but a profound human lesson. After the ceremony-like moment, the general spoke again, this time to the entire team. True leadership and courage are not always measured in action during combat. Sometimes they are measured in the ability to recognize, understand, and respect the strength and dedication of others. Sergeant Turner has shown that lesson today. Let this guide you in every operation, every interaction, and every challenge you face. Turner felt a deep sense of fulfillment. The desert, the tomb, the guard, and the general had all contributed to a transformative experience. He realized that understanding others required patience, observation, and humility. He also understood that humor, while valuable, needed to be tempered with thoughtfulness and awareness of context. The guard's tattoo, once a source of curiosity and amusement, had become a symbol of wisdom, patience, and the quiet strength of dedication. As the team prepared to leave the tomb, Turner approached the guard one last time. "Thank you," he said simply, his voice steady but filled with sincerity. The guard nodded, a gesture of acceptance and mutual respect. Turner felt that the exchange transcended words. It was an unspoken bond forged through understanding and humility. The Delta team climbed into their vehicles, ready to continue their mission elsewhere. But Turner's mind remained on the tomb and the lessons he had learned. He thought about courage, honor, and respect. Not the kind celebrated in stories or movies, but the quiet, enduring kind that shapes lives and cultures. He realized that the experience had changed him, not in tactics or strategy, but in character, awareness, and perspective. As the vehicles drove away, the tomb guard remained standing, vigilant and unwavering. Turner looked back one final time, feeling a mixture of admiration, gratitude, and humility. The tattoo, etched with history and meaning, remained a symbol of something greater than himself, a reminder that respect and understanding were as powerful as any weapon, and often far more important. The desert stretched endlessly ahead, but Turner knew that the lessons he had learned here would follow him wherever he went. The humor, curiosity, and mistakes of the past had been transformed into insight, respect, and genuine appreciation. He realized that sometimes the greatest victories were not those achieved in combat, but those earned in quiet moments of understanding and connection. As the sun climbed higher in the sky, Turner leaned back in his seat, reflecting on the journey of the past few days. He had begun with curiosity and a sense of humor, moved through observation and reflection, and ended with respect, understanding, and personal growth. The tomb guard had not only protected the sacred site, but had also imparted a lesson that would last a lifetime. That true strength lies in humility, that courage can be silent, and that respect is earned through awareness, action, and empathy. Turner smiled to himself, knowing that this experience had changed him forever. The desert, the tomb, the guard, and the general had all contributed to a story that was more than a mission. It was a life lesson, one that would guide him in every challenge, every interaction, and every decision he made. The tattoo, once a subject of mockery, had become a symbol of honor, history, and human connection, a powerful reminder that understanding and respect were the true marks of a warrior. As the team disappeared into the horizon, Turner looked back once more, letting the image of the guard and his tattoo sink into his memory. The desert was vast, the mission ongoing, but the lesson was clear. True courage and respect were found not only in action, but in observation,